Have you ever bought a product based on one of your friends' recommendations? Most probably, yes. The spread of ideas, trends, products can heavily be influenced by our social networks. But why is it some don't spread? Maybe no one is recommending them? Often there will be a whole host of reasons why they won't become the next must-have. But does it even matter? Sometimes not, but when it comes to innovations which reduce our carbon emissions, it certainly does matter. My name is Emily Vrain, and I'm a researcher from the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change based at the University of East Anglia in the UK. And today I'm going to present research I have been involved in with my colleague Charlie Wilson as part of a research project known as SILCI. Now, it goes without saying that despite the world's recent events, which drastically altered our behaviours, mainly limiting our travel and keeping us at home, and which resulted in an estimated 17% reductions in daily global carbon emissions. I might just add, such levels only correspond to those of 2006, highlighting the large growth in global emissions observed over the past 14 years. So despite this, we continue to face a climate emergency. This issue has certainly not gone away, and the need to limit warming to 1.5 degrees still exists, with a deadline getting ever nearer. As some countries begin to come out of lockdown, eager to boost their crumbled economies, solutions and urgent action are required from all sectors and going to need to engage all stakeholders. Now, the very rapid reductions in emissions needed is typically framed as a supply-side problem. However, in recent years, there is a growing recognition of the need to focus on lowering the amount of energy actually demanded in the first place. One such part of this jigsaw is to focus on the efforts needed from the consumer perspective, i.e. us, the general public. One group of researchers asks, what if we can see around us there already exists lots of novel, digitally enabled innovations? What if these can transform the energy system, making it smaller, decreasing demand, therefore making the overall challenge of getting carbon out of the system, making it less of a monster? Their models show that it is possible to meet carbon targets and sustainable development goals without the need for negative emission technology such as carbon capture storage. Well, here are some examples of low-carbon consumer-facing innovations which all exist, are not mainstream, and offer a different way of living our lives, and have the potential to decrease carbon emissions. Here we have the transport sector changing the way that we move around. Food and agriculture, how we get our food and where we get our food from. In the energy system, changing when or where we get our energy from. And in our homes. These innovations are not only potentially low carbon, as growing evidence suggests, they offer attributes which current incumbents don't. So usership, controllability, choice. So if they already exist in the world we live today, how do we get more people adopting them? Using the well-established theoretical framework, the diffusion of innovations, we investigate this very question. Are early adopters fulfilling their role, helping jump the challenging chasm and spreading the innovations to the mainstream market? And if not, what are the barriers? We know from diffusion and social theories that innovations spread through different processes of social influence and communication mechanisms. For example, from our social networks, social and traditional media, and how we see others are behaving around us. Early adopters are considered to be opinion leaders who play a central part for the adoption of innovations, typically respected by their peers, ask for advice and information, helping non-adopters overcome concerns, reducing uncertainties and perceived risks regarding an innovation, and thus helping lead to a greater adoption amongst the social networks. Now, the best scenario for an innovation would be that early adopters have lots of friends with various characteristics, not trapped in a clique, and therefore increasing the opportunity to spread information. Such social network characteristics fundamentally impact the dynamical, i.e. communication processes within it. Now, it's this very premise which guides our study to investigate the social network characteristics and communication behaviours of early adopters and non-adopters, providing insights into which traits do not conform to expectations and therefore highlighting potential reasons contributing to why they are not reaching the mainstream. To investigate these topics, an online survey was administered in the UK to adopters and non-adopter groups for 3 case study innovations in the home domain: smart lighting, smart heating systems, and smart appliances. Now, by smart home technology, I'm referring to those in the home which allows us to make more energy efficient use of our lighting and heating and appliances through digitally enabled control from our smartphones or tablets. A non-representative convenience sample of UK respondents were recruited online through 2 distinct methods between May and July last year, 2019. To collect an over-representative sample of adopters, the first method utilised social media platforms, placing posts and adverts linking to the online survey and offering a prize draw incentive for survey completion. Contacts from the smart home industry, trade shows and exhibits provided suggestions for web pages to administer and target smart home adopters. But then to target non-adopters, the second method utilised a non-probability quota sampling with Qualtrics' online opt-in panel. The survey covered a range of topics using the diffusion of innovations as a framework, from people's personal characteristics, their opinions of the innovations, the communication behaviours about them, and their social networks. The survey was designed in a way that would allow us to make as many comparisons between non-adopters and adopters. The survey was constructed using Qualtrics, an online platform which enables JavaScript code to be added. This allowed us to include a gamified name generator to collect information about a person's close social network and its characteristics. This made the survey much more engaging and allowed us to easily record information about the respondents' network. We asked, looking back over the last 6 months, please tell us the first name or initials of up to 5 close friends. So what did we find out? Let's first look at who we're dealing with. We collected 700 survey responses, and if we compare the adopters with the non-adopters, we can see that there are many more males in the adopter category. They are younger, they're much wealthier, and they spend a lot more time on social media than non-adopters. Now, this fits with market research on smart home users and meets our expectations, so no surprises there. But what about their social networks and communication behaviour? That this has never been collected before. Our study found that the social networks of adopters were more clustered, their friends knowing each other, and with greater homophilous wealth, meaning their friends are as wealthy as they are. Adopters not only actively sought information and constructed their opinion of smart home tech from a range of sources, they also self-reported as being opinion leaders and influencing others. Overall, adopters communicated about energy smart home technologies with more people than non-adopters, but not especially more weak ties. Non-adopters, on the other hand, were found not to be information seekers and shaped their opinions on smart home technology from their social networks, speaking predominantly to their strong ties. However, their social networks contained very few adopters. Non-adopters were nearly 3 times less likely to know anyone with smart home tech than adopters, and this heavily reduces their exposure to first-hand experience and knowledge. So what do all these results actually mean? Are early adopters helping cross the chasm for smart home technology? Well, elements of these findings are consistent with theory expectations, implying that common prescriptions for social mechanisms and the diffusion of innovations should, in principle, apply to smart home technology for crossing the chasm into the mass market. However, we did identify 3 areas where potential social barriers could exist which hindered the diffusion process. Our results about adopters' social networks being clustered and homophilous, especially with wealth, could lead to interpersonal information being trapped in wealthy social groups and restricting diffusion. This does, however, need further testing in larger samples and with greater robust methods, such as mapping individuals' whole networks. Two other interrelated results, which could be inhibiting the spread of information, include adopters' lack of communication with weak ties and the fact that non-adopters have low connectivity to adopters. The non-adopters' requirement for interpersonal information is just not being met through their social networks, nor are adopters helping spread messages beyond their own wealthy clustered social networks. So what strategies are needed? Targeted strategies could be derived from a range of social network interventions to encourage adopters to share information beyond their close social networks and increase connectivity to non-adopters. They need to focus on increasing non-adopters' exposure to interpersonal channels of communication. One example could be open home events, which are usually used for showing off eco-renovations in houses. But why not extend that to smart tech? Providing first-hand experience and knowledge from adopters, as well as the chance for visitors to test and try how the technology actually works in a real home, not just a show home in a store. Other strategies need to focus on encouraging adopters to share information more with weak ties, seeding ideas amongst distal ties. Now, given the digital element of the technology and the growing importance of online social media for communication, adopters should be encouraged to share reviews and technology know-how to other platforms, more mainstream than their regular techie forums that adopters are more likely to go to and discuss things amongst themselves. Encouraging adopters to communicate and spread less technical information externally to wider audiences of non-adopters increases exposure to those important interpersonal channels and improves upon suppliers' current strategies of just placing mass media publicity on such platforms. So these have been some of the key insights we've discovered about smart home technologies. But why does this all matter? Since consumers and households can exert influence over the entire supply chain, consumer behaviour should be considered high on the agenda when it comes to mitigating climate change. Now, this research used smart home technology as a case study, which represents a new class of digitally enabled smartphone connected devices. And what diffusion theory tells us is that what we have learnt about some of the potential barriers to mass market adoption should apply to innovations with similar sets of attributes, similar adopter characteristics, and a similar set of communication salience. This research makes several important contributions to the literature. Firstly, the confirmation that the diffusion of innovation predominantly still holds for digitally low-carbon innovations. Second, the collection of insights from actual adopters of smart home tech. Thirdly, we identify which social elements of the diffusion process are potentially hindering adoption. And finally, help to inform strategies and identify solutions to overcome this market stagnation and the dreaded chasm. Thank you very much for listening, and for any more information on our project, please visit our website, silci.org.